Let me ask you something you may not want to hear. If death came for you tonight, would it catch you off guard? Most people live like life is guaranteed, like tomorrow will always show up, like we'll get some kind of warning when the end is near. A countdown, a sign, a gentle tap on the shoulder. But here's the truth. Death doesn't knock. It kicks the door in. No permission, no preparation. Just silence. Then everything changes. Take Mark, for example. He was 62, healthy, active, worked out twice a week, still made coffee for his wife every morning. One day he mentioned feeling off, a little dizzy, slight pressure in his chest. He brushed it off his stress, kept going. The next morning, he didn't wake up. No long goodbye. No hospital vigil, just gone. And that's why this video exists. Not to scare you, but to wake you up. To help you notice the signs that too many people ignore until it's too late. Because sometimes the body whispers before it breaks. Sometimes the soul signals before it slips away. And we miss it. Not because we're careless, but because we assume death is something that happens later. But what if it's already standing outside the door? The Stoics faced this truth head on. They believed that keeping death in view was the best way to fully live. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." It wasn't about fear. It was about urgency, clarity, courage. See, when you accept that you're mortal, fragile, temporary, you stop wasting time. You stop pretending pain is just stress. You stop ignoring your instincts. You stop waiting for the perfect moment to get serious about your health, your habits, your relationships, your legacy. This isn't about paranoia. It's about preparation. It's about recognizing that while we may not control when or how we leave this world, we can control how awake we are while we're still in it. So in this video, we're going to unpack 5 physical and psychological signs that may signal death is near. Not urban legends, not superstition, but real research-backed, often overlooked clues that the body and the mind may be quietly trying to tell us something. And yes, some of them may sound familiar, but that's exactly why you need to hear them again, this time with full awareness. Because the question isn't, will death come? The question is, will you be ready when it does? This isn't meant to make you live in fear. It's meant to make you live on purpose, to be more present in your conversations, to take your symptoms seriously, to check in with your soul as much as your schedule, because death might not come for decades, but that doesn't mean we can afford to live like we're invincible. So before we dive in, I want you to ask yourself one simple question. If today was my last normal day, what signs might I have overlooked? Let's pay attention together. Let's listen to our bodies, to our minds, to the quiet signals that, when honored, might just give us one more sunrise. Let's not wait for death to kick in the door. Let's start preparing for it now. Not out of fear, but out of love for the life we still have time to fully live. Sign 1. Major changes in sleep patterns. Let's begin with one of the first and often most misunderstood signs that the body may be preparing to shut down. Major changes in sleep patterns. We're not talking about staying up late because of stress or catching up on rest over the weekend. We're talking about a sudden, unexplained shift in how someone sleeps. Sleeping far too much, or hardly sleeping at all. And here's the part that often goes unnoticed. This change can come weeks or even months before death. Take Harold, for example. He was 78, sharp-minded, still read the newspaper every morning, still called his grandkids to ask about school. But one day something changed. He began sleeping most of the day, or he'd do the opposite. Stay up all night restless like his internal clock had disconnected from the world. At first his family thought it was depression or boredom, but Harold wasn't sad. He wasn't anxious. He was just tired. 3. Weeks later he passed peacefully in his sleep. Now medical science helps us understand what may be happening in cases like this. As the body begins preparing for the end, it slowly shuts down non-essential systems. The brain starts conserving energy. The metabolism slows. And sleep becomes the body's way of preserving what little energy it has left. For vital functions only. But here's the key. The change is not random. It's not just aging. It's the body signaling that it's entering a different phase, one that requires quiet, rest, stillness. And for those watching from the outside, it can be confusing. You might think, they're sleeping all the time. Should I wake them up? Should I encourage them to eat, to get up, to stay active? But sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is let them rest. Not with sadness, but with reverence. Because what if we saw this not as decline, but as transition? What if, instead of panicking when someone sleeps more than usual, we paused and asked, what do they need to say while they're still awake? What do I need to say while I still can? And if you're the one experiencing these changes, if you're finding yourself sleeping too much or unable to sleep at all, and there's no medical explanation, it may be time to check in, not just with a doctor, but with your soul. Are there things left unsaid? Regrets that still whisper? Forgiveness that hasn't been given or received? This is where the Stoic perspective can change how we face these signs. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do every act of your life as though it were the last act of your life." In other words, if life is whispering that the end may be near, don't run from it. Lean in, use the silence of sleepless nights to reflect. Use the stillness of long naps to listen inwardly. Use these moments, however difficult, as an opportunity to ask, am I at peace with myself? Is there someone I need to call, even just to say thank you? Is there a truth I've been avoiding and now it's time to face it? Because death doesn't always come in chaos. Sometimes it comes softly, in the fading appetite, in the quiet moments, in the sleep that stretches just a little longer each day. It's not morbid. It's not defeat. It's the body and the soul preparing for surrender. And if we're lucky, we'll have time to notice. We'll have time to sit with it, to love more openly, to say what matters, because the tragedy isn't that we die. The tragedy is that we die without ever truly being awake. So if you notice this sign in someone you love, sit with them, hold their hand. Let them sleep, yes, but also gently ask, is there anything you want to talk about? Anything you need to let go of? And if that person is you, let this be your invitation to reflect, to forgive, to finish this chapter with presence and intention, because whether we get 100 years or 50, our time is finite. But our peace, that's something we can choose. Right now. Sign 2. Sudden, persistent weight loss. Let's move to the second sign that death may be approaching. And this one is often misunderstood, even celebrated at first. Sudden, persistent weight loss. Now let's be honest. In our culture, weight loss is usually seen as a good thing, complimented, applauded. Sometimes, even envied. Wow, you look great. What's your secret? You must be feeling amazing. But what if the weight loss isn't intentional? What if it's happening quietly, steadily, and without effort? In the final phase of life, weight loss doesn't come from diet or discipline. It comes from something much deeper, a shift in the body's priorities. You see, as the body begins to prepare for its final transition, it starts letting go of anything non-essential. And that often includes muscle mass, fat storage, even the desire to eat. This condition has a name, cachexia, a form of muscle wasting commonly seen in serious illness or at the end of life. It's not about willpower. It's not about fitness. It's the body quietly telling you, we're no longer building, we're conserving. And it often begins with subtle signs. Food doesn't taste the same. Appetite fades. Meals get skipped. Without much notice, digestive discomfort increases. Even favorite foods lose their appeal. Then comes the visual change. The shrinking arms, the looser clothes, the prominent collarbones. And here's the emotional trap. Sometimes, the appetite returns for a day or two, a sudden craving, a full meal, and you think they're getting better. But it's usually not recovery. It's what some hospice workers call the rally. A brief surge of energy before the body begins its final descent. And for the person experiencing it, this change can be deeply emotional. Because weight loss isn't just about numbers, it's about identity. We don't realize how much of our sense of self is tied to our physical form, our strength, our shape, our reflection. When those things begin to fade, people often feel invisible, powerless, even ashamed. One woman, 84, told her nurse, "I don't recognize the person in the mirror anymore. I feel like I'm disappearing." That's not just physical decline, that's grief, the loss of control, the loss of normal, the loss of the body we once called home. And this is where the Stoic mindset offers a gentle yet powerful truth. Epictetus said, "Don't cling to what is not your own," and that includes your youth, your muscles, even your appetite. The Stoics taught that everything we are given, our body, our health, our vigor, is temporary. We are stewards, not owners. And when the time comes to let go, resistance only brings suffering. So how do we face this kind of change? With strength, not despair. First, if you're witnessing this in someone you love, pause before you celebrate the weight loss. Ask questions. Gently, don't assume it's good news. Instead, ask, "How are you feeling when you eat? Is anything tasting off lately? Are you feeling weaker than usual?" These conversations may feel uncomfortable, but they could reveal early signs that something deeper is unfolding. And if you're going through this yourself, if food feels heavy, if meals feel more like a task than a pleasure, I want to offer you something you won't hear often. You are not failing. You are not fading. You are transitioning. And that is not something to fear. That is something to honor. Maybe this is the season to release expectations, to let go of the pressure to bounce back, to trade body image for inner peace. Maybe this is the moment to sit with your reflection and say, "Thank you, body, for carrying me this far. I don't need you to be strong anymore. I just need you to rest." Because even in the final chapter, there is beauty, not in appearance, but in presence, in acceptance, in the grace of letting go. So when weight loss becomes a quiet, persistent visitor, don't ignore it. But don't panic either. Instead, listen, observe, and remember that sometimes the body speaks through subtraction. And when it does, the greatest strength we can show is not to fight what's leaving, but to love what remains. Because we are more than flesh, more than numbers, more than size or strength. We are the story inside, the soul behind the skin. And when the body begins to loosen its grip on this world, that's when the spirit begins preparing for the next. Sign 3. Psychological withdrawal and emotional detachment. Now let's talk about a sign that's not so visible, but often far more profound. Psychological withdrawal. Emotional detachment. This isn't confusion. It's not dementia. It's not forgetfulness or mental decline. It's something quieter, softer, almost sacred. You'll notice it in small ways first. The person who once planned their week down to the hour suddenly doesn't care what day it is. The one who used to double-check their calendar now shrugs when plans change. They stop talking about the future. The to-do lists vanish. The interest in news, finances, house repairs, it all fades. At first it might seem like they're just checking out, but what if they're tuning in? You see, what many interpret as giving up is often a shift in consciousness, a turning inward, a gentle releasing of the things that no longer matter at the edge of life. There's a reason for this. As the body prepares to wind down, the mind also begins to declutter, not just to preserve energy, but to preserve peace. Scientific studies have shown that as people approach death, their brain often reduces activity in areas responsible for anxiety, stress, and fear. they begin to detach, not out of despair, but because something deeper is taking priority. And then, something remarkable can happen. It's called terminal lucidity, a sudden return of mental clarity, even in people who have been nonverbal or unresponsive. They might speak names, they might smile, they might look around the room as if seeing something you can't. And in some cases, they say goodbye, not with fear, but with presence. One hospice nurse recalled a patient who hadn't spoken in days. Then just hours before passing, she looked up and whispered, "He's waiting for me, I have to go." No one else was in the room. Whether you believe that's spiritual, symbolic, or something else entirely, what matters is this: they weren't scared. They were at peace. This stage is often accompanied by something strange and beautiful. They start to speak in metaphors. They might say things like, "I'm getting ready for a long trip. The train's almost here. I've got to find my shoes." They might reference people who've already passed, parents, spouses, old friends, and sometimes they speak to them as if they're in the room. Now, the rational mind may struggle with this. We want to ground everything in logic, but maybe not everything can or should be explained. From a Stoic perspective, this moment is not a failure. It is a return. Seneca once wrote, "Death is not the extinguishing of the light, but the turning off of the lamp because the dawn has come." In this state, the mind begins loosening its grip on the physical world, on possessions, on status, on what's next. Because what matters now is completion, closure, presence. So what can we learn from this sign? First, if you see this in a loved one, try not to bring them back into the noise. Don't force small talk or future plans. Instead, meet them where they are. Ask about the past. Let them talk in metaphors. Let them reminisce. Sit in silence if that's what they need. And if you're experiencing this withdrawal yourself, if the world feels distant, if conversations feel too heavy, if all you want is stillness, it doesn't mean you're broken. It may mean you're preparing to make peace, to reflect, to release. This is not depression. It's not failure. It's a final act of returning to essence, of putting down everything that isn't you. The Stoics taught us that death is not an enemy, it's a teacher, and one of its lessons is this: what once felt urgent eventually fades into quiet, irrelevance, the bills, the emails, the deadlines, the arguments, even the fears, and in their place, stillness, clarity, truth. So if you're watching someone emotionally drift, don't panic. Hold space, honor their journey, and maybe even ask yourself, what could I let go of right now before life forces me to? Because death, paradoxically, can teach us how to live. Fully, simply, bravely. And when someone begins to withdraw from this world, they're not always pulling away from you. Sometimes they're reaching towards something more. And in that moment, your presence, your calm, loving presence, is more powerful than any cure. Sign 4. Circulatory and breathing changes. Let's move into a sign that's more physical, more visible, and often more difficult to witness. Circulatory and breathing changes. When death is near, the body begins to make silent decisions, and one of the first is preservation. You see, the human body is remarkably wise. When it senses that life is fading, it redirects energy and blood away from the extremities and toward the vital core, the heart, the brainstem, the lungs. What does this look like? It begins with the hands and feet. They start to feel colder, sometimes even icy. Then a faint bluish or purplish tint appears. You might notice a blotchy pattern on the skin. This is called mottling. It's not a bruise, it's not trauma. It's the body saying, I no longer need to keep the edges warm, I need to protect the center. And then comes the shift in breathing. It's no longer smooth and rhythmic. It becomes uneven. There may be deep gasps followed by long pauses, sometimes 10, 20, even 30 seconds. This is known as Cheney-Stokes respiration. and it can be incredibly unsettling to witness. One moment the person seems gone, then suddenly, a breath, sharp, loud, and then silence again. I want to tell you a story. It's about Eleanor, an 83-year-old grandmother who passed peacefully in her home. In her final days, her family gathered around her bed. They noticed her hands had turned cold and her fingertips looked almost bruised. Her breathing became strange, like a pattern of deep gasps and stillness. At first, they were terrified. They thought she was suffering. They thought her body was failing her. But a hospice nurse explained something that changed the moment entirely. She said, "This is not failure. This is the body doing what it knows how to do. This is not chaos. It's mercy. You see, what feels like a breakdown is often a soft release. The nervous system is letting go. The lungs no longer need to work as hard. The heart doesn't need to push blood to the fingertips anymore. Everything is focusing on one thing: peaceful exit. And yet, for loved ones watching, this moment can feel unbearable. You want to warm their hands. You want to shake them out of the stillness. You want one more normal breath. One more sign that they're still here. But here's the truth. This is the graceful retreat of the body, a shutting down not with violence, but with wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, once said, "Observe how transient and trivial all mortal life is. Yesterday a little mucus, tomorrow a corpse." It may sound harsh, but it's not. It's honest. It's grounding. What the Stoics remind us is that death is not a malfunction. It's part of the design. And when we see these changes, cold skin, slow breathing, that distant gaze, we are not witnessing destruction. We're witnessing departure. Now let's talk about what to do when you see these signs. First, remain calm. Your calmness is the greatest gift you can offer. Don't panic. Don't try to force breath. Don't call out in fear. Instead, sit close. Hold a hand even if it's cold. Whisper gently. Play soft music. Read poetry or scripture if they love that. Let the room feel like love, not alarm. Because what they need most now is not fixing, it's presence. Second, understand that this is not a moment to fight but to honor. There's a quiet dignity in the way the body says goodbye. No longer holding on, no longer striving, no longer resisting. And maybe, just maybe, that's something we can learn from. Too often we fight to stay in control, we grip every detail, we demand comfort. But what if peace comes? Only when we finally stop holding on. The Stoics believed in dying every day, letting go of attachments, of ego, of illusion. Because when the final day comes, we are already practiced in the art of surrender. So if you ever find yourself in this sacred space, watching a loved one breathe their last, or sensing your own body begin to let go, let that be your moment of presence, not panic. Let that be your lesson in stillness, in acceptance, in trust. The cold hands, the fading breath, they are not signs of fear, they are signs of release. And if you can hold space for someone in that moment, you are doing something holy. Because the soul perhaps doesn't leave in fire, it leaves in wind, in light, in the quiet, in between. Sign 5. The body's final communications. There is a moment when the body stops speaking in words and begins to speak in silence. It's the final stage, not of life's failure, but of life's completion. And if you've ever been in the room when someone is about to pass, you know what I'm talking about. The room gets quiet, but the soul starts talking. See, many people believe that when someone is unresponsive, they can no longer hear us. But the truth is, hearing is often the last sense to fade. Even when their eyes are closed, even when they can no longer speak back, they hear you. Which means your words, your goodbyes, your forgiveness, your love still matter. In fact, they may matter more than ever. And then the body begins to show signs that the end is close. There's often a change in smell, a metallic or earthy scent. It's subtle, but real. This is the result of organs quietly shutting down. It's not failure, it's transition. You may also hear a strange sound in the throat. It's called the death rattle. It can sound alarming, like someone is struggling to breathe or choking. But here's the truth. They're not in pain. Their muscles are simply too relaxed to clear the throat. It's not a cry for help. It's a body at peace, slowly letting go of control. And then, there's something harder to explain. Something more spiritual than scientific. It's the reaching. Some people lift their arms. Others reach out towards something no one else can see. Some call it hallucination, but others, especially those who've sat with the dying, know it's something else. A final gesture, toward a memory, a vision, a loved one who's already passed. It's as if the soul is reaching home. There are also strange timings in these moments. Have you noticed how many people pass right after a birthday? Or just after the family finally arrives? Or after someone whispered, "It's okay, you can go now." It's more than coincidence. It's a form of emotional timing, as if the body and soul waits for a final milestone, a last reunion, a moment of release. And this is where Stoic wisdom becomes so powerful, because Marcus Aurelius reminded us, what matters most is not what you bear, but how you bear it. Death is not a horror to escape. It is a moment to complete, and for those of us still alive, our job in that moment isn't to fight or fix. It's to be there, to be still, to let go. That may be the hardest kind of love, not the kind that clings, but the kind that releases. To hold someone's hand when it turns cold. To whisper, "I love you," when they can't reply. To stay in the room when every part of you wants to run away. That is the final act of courage. You see, death has a way of stripping everything away. Titles, jobs, opinions, plans, even names. All that remains is connection, presence, and peace. When you sit with someone at the end of life, you are not watching them disappear. You are watching them transform. You are witnessing the most sacred doorway we will all one day walk through. And perhaps the most stoic thing we can do is stop being afraid of that door. Stop pretending we're immune. Stop calling it morbid to talk about death. Because when you truly face it, you stop fearing it. You start living with urgency, gratitude, love. So the next time you're with someone near the end, remember this. If they reach, let them. If they rattle, hold steady. If they seem far away, whisper anyway. They may not respond, but they will feel you. And sometimes your presence is what allows their final journey to begin. This is not the end. It's the threshold. And on that threshold, the most powerful gift you can give is simply to stay. Let's get one thing clear. This video isn't about death, it's about waking up. Because if there's one thing life doesn't promise, it's a warning. Just ask Tom. He was 66, healthy, walked 2 miles a day, didn't smoke, didn't drink. And then, one morning, he sat down with his coffee and never stood up again. Sudden heart failure, no symptoms, no goodbyes. Now I don't share this to scare you. I share it because this is life, unpredictable, fragile, and unbelievably precious. See, most people don't ignore the signs of death because they're careless. They ignore them because they don't know what to look for. That's why we walked through the 5 signs in this video, not to create paranoia, but to create clarity, to offer a map for the most important journey no one ever teaches us how to navigate. And maybe right now you're thinking of someone, a parent, a partner, a friend, who showed these signs but no one connected the dots. Or maybe you're thinking of your own body, your own thoughts, your own shifts. If so, that awareness isn't a curse, it's a gift, because here's what the Stoics taught us. Let each thing you would do, say, or intend be like that of a dying person. Marcus Aurelius, Why? Because the person who knows their time is limited lives fully. When you recognize these signs, not just in others but in yourself, you stop wasting energy on the small stuff. You stop holding grudges that weigh down your soul. You stop waiting for the perfect time to say what needs to be said. You speak the truth, you forgive, you show up, and you live with your soul awake. So let me ask you, as we close this chapter together, have you spoken what truly matters and to the people who matter most? Have you laid down the regrets you no longer need to carry? Because these signs, they aren't monsters hiding in the dark, they're mirrors. And they're asking you one thing. Are you living ready? Not ready to die, but ready to live. With your eyes open, your heart clear, and your time on this earth intentionally spent. There's a quiet freedom in preparing, not out of fear but out of wisdom. Not because you expect the end, but because you value the now. So wherever you are in your journey, remember this. You are not powerless, you are not too late, and you are not alone. Breathe deeper, forgive faster, speak softer, and love like it. Counts because it does. And when the moment does come, whether for you or someone you love, you'll be ready. Not because you rehearsed for death, but because you finally learn how to live. If this message stirred something in you, don't let it fade when the video ends. Hit subscribe, not just for content, but for clarity. Every week we dive into the truths most people avoid, so you can live with your eyes open, your mind steady, and your heart light. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's been sensing the shift but didn't have the words for it. And in the comments, tell me, what is one thing you now feel called to say or do while there's still time? This isn't just a video, it's a reminder. Live ready, love boldly, die with nothing unsaid.